Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride is with us this morning. How are you? Nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. We had the Health Secretary on in the previous hour, and it's your fault, your party's fault, that people will still be on trolleys waiting to get treatment this winter.
Well, look, nobody denies there's a lot of pressure on the NHS and we need to get the backlogs down. I do think that COVID was a major factor in arriving at where we are at the moment. But look, if we're to improve things, the answer is not just announcing ever more money going into the National Health Service. We actually had record levels of funding in the NHS, more staff in the NHS than at any time in its history. What we need is a clear plan on productivity. So what's happened in the NHS over the last few years is productivity has gone backwards, and that's the output per worker. And unless we can get that up, we're not going to effectively be able to face the kind of challenges of backlogs, but also of an ageing population and ever greater demands on the National Health Service. And that's the bit we've heard absolutely nothing from this government about. Now, Jeremy Hunt, in his last budget, came forward with a £3.4 billion productivity plan, a long-term workforce plan for the NHS. We knew we had the right plan to resolve these issues. But what we're hearing from this government is that they're now consulting into next year on where they might go on these kind of issues. And that, I'm afraid, is not going to be enough.
What you needed to do was get junior doctors back to work, and you failed to do that. And that's why the waiting list went up and up and up.
Well, yes, of course, getting junior doctors back to work and railway workers back to work is very important. But you don't do it by simply caving in to the trade unions, trade union paymasters' wage demands. You settle, but you settle on the basis of expecting productivity improvements. And that's not something that this government did. In fact, what they did was they went for pensioners by removing the winter fuel payments to millions of pensioners, 2/3 of those pensioners actually below the poverty line, losing that benefit. Now, what is that going to do for the National Health Service? That's going to pile further pressure on the National Health Service this winter, as millions of pensioners, some of whom will have to make that difficult decision between eating or heating. And that's not going to help things, Kate.
A recent survey found that 59% of business leaders said staff had been forced to miss work due to crumbling public services. That's part of your legacy.
So what we need to do, as I say, is we need a clear plan on productivity. And part of that plan has got to be to spend money on investment spending. So, for example, in the NHS, around the actual hospitals themselves, the kind of equipment. Well, we had a plan to do exactly that. And we did a lot of that anyway. But we also had this
40 hospitals inside 5 years, and you didn't.
Well, the important thing is that back in that last budget that we had in March of this year, we came forward with a very clear plan, fully funded, that would drive productivity and improvements and get investment into the areas of the National Health Service that will result in better results. And what we've seen from this government at the moment is more money and various announcements. Well, that's been going on for a very long time. But what we're not seeing is the clear plan around the workforce and investment to get the NHS productivity up so that we can meet these particular demands.
More than 1 million low-paid workers set to get a pay rise in the budget tomorrow. Minimum wage going up by 6%. Do you support that?
I think in principle, and we brought in the national living wage as a party, and I'm very proud of that. And we've always, particularly through tax cuts, been on the side of lower paid people. We increased the personal allowance, for example, which is the amount under income tax you can earn without paying any tax at all. That was for lower paid workers. But I think what you can't overlook is the pressure that some of this is going to be putting on businesses. Now, my background is business. You know, I set up my own company many years ago here and in the United States. I know what it is to struggle through and make a success of an enterprise. And things that don't help are additional costs. And it's likely in this budget, of course, that we're going to see a substantial hike in national insurance for employers in the budget. And that is going to load additional cost on businesses, along with the kind of employment regulation reforms that this government's bringing through. I think it's going to be much more difficult for companies now to expand and recruit people and pay better wages going forward.
So I'm not sure. Are you saying that you do support it or you don't?
I think we need to look at it in the round. I mean, in principle, we have, as a party, been very committed to the national living wage. We actually brought that policy in because we believe in it, and we've seen big increases in the economic circumstances of those who are lower paid in this country as a consequence. I support the principle, but I'm making a broader point here, which is this is a government that does not understand business or growth. And the reason it doesn't understand it is it's demonstrating already that where it's going for its tax increases are going to be a drag on growth. National insurance for employers is going to mean huge costs for businesses of all sizes up and down the country.
What's the Shadow Chancellor banging on about with the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, and reports being released tomorrow? Why is he so upset about it?
Well, I think he makes some very important points, which is the OBR, which is meant to be...
Homework,
they do, and they're meant to be an independent organisation, totally non-political. And they have been...
I thought you were going to
Yes, absolutely, but a really important job to do. But I think if you have a situation where they are looking into the interactions between the Treasury when Jeremy Hunt was Chancellor and the OBR, and to opine on that through a report, then it's not unreasonable, firstly, that Jeremy should, I think, have been involved in that process when it started. Secondly, I don't think it's unreasonable that he should have been presented with the draft conclusions to comment on before they're made public. And thirdly, it does seem extraordinary that the OBR should be coming forward on the day of the budget with what will no doubt be a document that the Labour Party will politicise as a smokescreen to detract from all the tax rises and other measures they're going to be bringing in tomorrow.
Well, we'll see, won't we? It would be remiss of me not to ask you about Mike Amesbury and the video that we've seen over the weekend.
Well, deeply disturbing and very worrying, I think, for the individual who clearly, if you look at that video, has been assaulted. Quite right that he's had the Labour whip withdrawn. I think beyond that, given there's a police investigation, I don't think it would be right for me to comment, but a deeply disturbing situation.
Should he be asked to resign? Should he be offering his resignation?
So I think that's a matter for him. I think in all of these situations, although the circumstantial evidence, what we've seen so far, does seem extremely compelling, I have to say I'm one of those people that believes that due process should be followed, and there is a police investigation at the moment, and I think we have to wait to see what comes of that and when we have the full picture of at that point, but deeply worrying to see that.
Does it not just damage the reputation of the whole House of Commons?
Well, of course it does. It brings the whole House into disrepute. I mean, the idea of a Member of Parliament who is elected by his or her constituents to represent them, to stand up for them, to fight their corner, as iron MPs do up and down the country, to actually assault one of your constituents is an extraordinary situation. And that's what we've seen in that video. But as I say, let's see what the police conclude.
Talk to me about who you want to be the next leader of your party.
So I haven't come out publicly, Kay, to say who I think that should be.
I know, that's why
I know, well, you ask all the difficult questions, don't you? That's why I look forward to being on your show. Look, I think we've got two very strong final candidates. I think Kemi is very clear in her principles. She's very forthright in her beliefs, and I think there's a certain authenticity that goes with that. I think Rob has said a lot of very powerful and interesting things about the economy, getting productivity up, getting growth going, the broader picture as to how, as a party, if we're going to get back into power, we need to have that platform of fiscal responsibility, but also a growing, higher productivity.
Who do you want to be the leader?
So, as I say, I'm not going to go. I'm not going public.
Is that because you want to keep your job?
No. I've said right from the beginning, whoever. And of course, I was a candidate in this thing, in which case I would have had a job, wouldn't I?
Yes.
No, I've said all along that I think we had a fantastic field of candidates in this contest. Will have absolute confidence.
You backed cleverly, though, didn't you?
And I did after I went out. Yes, I thought James had an awful lot to offer, but that's not the same thing as saying I don't think that the others did too. And I'm looking forward to the result on the 2nd.
OK, the Health Secretary made me into a verb this morning. He said, I don't want to be burlied.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a verb.
OK, that's fair enough. Yeah, what is to be strided? That's what I'd like to know. I'll leave that to your viewers. Oh, dear.
It's good to see you, as
nice to see you too.
Thank you very much indeed.
Take care.
Thank you.